Tom Reed stood at the observation deck of Station 7, watching the steady stream of alien ships dock and depart. His environmental suit's heads-up display continuously monitored the air quality, radiation levels, and a dozen other safety metrics. The other species found this amusing, a human refusing to trust the station's own systems. Still wearing that ridiculous suit, Reed, a deep voice boomed behind him. Commander Blake, a towering blue-skinned warrior from the Rock Plains, approached with heavy steps. The station's systems are perfectly functional. Tom turned and smiled politely through his transparent visor. Just following standard human safety protocols, Commander. Better safe than sorry. Blake laughed, the sound echoing through the deck. That's exactly why your kind will never be true warriors, always hiding behind protocols and backup systems. He gestured at the massive warship docking nearby. Look at my people's latest battle cruiser. No redundant systems, no backup generators, just pure power and courage. Tom noticed at least 3 potential structural weaknesses in the battlecruiser's design, but kept his thoughts to himself. Humans had learned long ago that pointing out such things only earned more mockery. The station's intercom crackled. Safety Inspector Reed to Docking Bay 12. Routine inspection required. Duty calls, Tom said, nodding to Blake. As he walked away, he heard the commander muttering about cowardly humans to his companions. In Docking Bay 12, a merchant vessel was preparing to unload its cargo. Tom activated his suit's scanning systems, methodically checking for hazardous materials, structural damage, and proper containment protocols. The ship's captain, a serpentine trader named Goldeye, watched with visible annoyance. This is the 3rd inspection this month, Goldeye hissed. No other species demand such tedious precautions. Standard procedure for all ships carrying Class B materials, Tom replied calmly, marking another item on his checklist. His scanner detected a minor radiation leak in one of the cargo containers. I'll need to see inside container 47. Goldeye's scales bristled. Absolutely not. The seal is intact. My readings show otherwise. Tom pulled up the holographic data. There's a small breach in the containment field. If left unchecked, it could contaminate the entire bay within hours. Paranoid humans and their endless safety measures. Goldeye spat, but slithered aside to let Tom inspect the container. Sure enough, a hairline crack had formed in the container's shielding. Tom quickly applied a temporary seal and marked it for proper repairs. Goldeye watched in sullen silence as Tom filed his report. Your cargo's cleared, but container 47 needs to be resealed before it can leave the station, Tom explained. I've arranged for repairs at Bay 15. They can have it done within the hour. Later that day, Tom sat in the station's control room, reviewing inspection logs with Captain Park, one of the few other humans on board. They both wore their environmental suits, a fact that drew constant stares from the alien crew members. Another radiation leak, Park asked, looking at the reports. That's the 3rd one this week. Tom nodded. They keep using these cheaper containment fields. Save money now, risk lives later. He pulled up more data on his display. I've also noticed an increase in ships arriving with minimal life support backup systems. It's like everyone's racing to see who can cut the most corners. Let them mock us, Park said, checking his own suit's readings. Humanity learned its lessons the hard way back on Earth. How many near-extinction events did we survive? Nuclear accidents, climate disasters, pandemics. Each one taught us the value of preparation. Tom remembered his history lessons. Earth's past was filled with catastrophes that humans had barely survived. Each disaster had shaped their species, making them more cautious, more prepared. While other races evolved through conquest or technological leaps, humanity had evolved through surviving their own mistakes. The station's warning system suddenly flashed red, then returned to normal. Tom was already running diagnostics before the alert ended. Probably just another glitch, one of the alien technicians said dismissively. Tom kept checking anyway. Humans had learned long ago that ignoring just another glitch could be fatal. As he worked, he could hear the other species in the control room whispering and chuckling about the paranoid humans and their endless safety checks. Let them laugh, Tom thought. He'd rather be called a coward than be unprepared when real danger struck. Something about that warning flash didn't feel right, and he intended to find out why. 3 days after the strange warning flash, Tom sat in his small office, surrounded by holographic displays showing data from the station's outer sensor array. Something wasn't right with the readings, but he couldn't quite figure out what. Still obsessing over that minor glitch, asked Officer Jones, another human who worked in station security. She wore her environmental suit just like Tom, a habit that had earned them both plenty of jokes from the alien crew. "Look at this," Tom said, pointing to one of the displays. "The background radiation levels at the edge of our sensor range keep showing tiny spikes. They're almost too small to notice, but they're happening in a pattern." Jones leaned closer, her helmet reflecting the blue glow of the screens. "Could be natural cosmic radiation. That's what everyone else says, but cosmic radiation isn't supposed to be regular like this." Tom pulled up more data. "See, every 12 hours, like clockwork." Before Jones could respond, Commander Blake burst into the office. "Reed, your endless safety checks are delaying ships again. We have important cargo waiting." Tom turned to face the blue-skinned warrior. "Sir, I've found some concerning patterns in our sensor data. I think we should." "Enough." Blake cut him off. "This is exactly why humans aren't taken seriously in the galaxy. You see danger in everything, even empty space. Better to see danger where there isn't any than miss danger where there is," Tom said quietly, but Blake was already storming out. Later that day, Tom noticed something new in the data. The regular radiation spikes were getting stronger, and they were moving closer to the station. He immediately reported his findings to Captain Park. "The pattern suggests something is approaching," Tom explained, showing the captain his analysis. "Whatever it is, it's massive enough to affect space-time itself, but it's moving slowly enough to avoid most standard detection methods." Park studied the data carefully. "Have you shown this to the Alliance Council?" "They dismissed it as human overcautiousness," Tom said. "Said I was seeing patterns that weren't there." Just then, Tom's sensors picked up an emergency transmission from a distant mining outpost. He patched it through to his office speakers. "Request immediate assistance. Something's wrong with our sun. Energy levels dropping. Temperature falling. Please respond." The message cut off in static. Tom quickly pulled up data from that sector. The stars serving that mining outpost showed unusual energy fluctuations, similar to the patterns he'd been tracking but much stronger. "We need to act," Tom said firmly, "even if no one else believes us." Captain Park nodded. "I'll contact Earth. They may be the only ones who'll take this seriously." Over the next few days, Tom gathered more evidence. 3 more distant outposts reported similar problems with their stars. Each time, the local authorities dismissed the concerns as equipment malfunctions or natural phenomena. Tom worked tirelessly, documenting everything. His environmental suit's computer helped him process the growing mountain of data. Other species had started calling him the suited prophet of doom, but he didn't care. During his off hours, Tom noticed more ships arriving at the station than usual. Many carried cargo that made no sense for their normal trade routes. It took him a while to realize what was happening. Other humans across the galaxy had noticed the same patterns. They were quietly preparing, moving supplies and equipment to safer locations. One evening, as Tom was reviewing the latest sensor data, Officer Jones rushed into his office. "Tom, you need to see this." She pulled up a live feed from a deep space telescope. In the darkness between stars, something moved. It was barely visible, like a heat shimmer on a hot day, but it was definitely there. And it was huge. "Whatever it is," Tom said, "it's following the same pattern I've been tracking. And it's not alone." He pointed to other distortions in the telescope image. There are more of them, all heading this way. Jones stared at the screen. How long do we have? Tom checked his calculations. At their current speed, maybe 2 weeks. The question is, will anyone believe us in time? The station's warning system flashed red again, longer this time. In the distance, another star flickered briefly before returning to normal. Tom watched through his office window, knowing that this was just the beginning. This time, it wasn't just a glitch. This time, humanity's paranoid attention to detail might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and extinction. The evidence was impossible to ignore now. In the week since Tom's discovery of the strange distortions, 3 more stars had dimmed significantly. The station's control room was in chaos as reports flooded in from across the sector. It's them, Tom said, pointing to the main display screen. He stood before the gathered station leaders, still in his environmental suit. Ancient energy beings, dormant for millions of years. They're waking up, and they're hungry. Commander Blake scoffed. Ancient beings, more human fairy tales. Then explain this, Tom replied, bringing up images from the affected systems. The stars in those regions were noticeably darker, their energy levels dropping rapidly. These creatures feed on stellar energy. Each star they drain makes them stronger. Captain Park backed him up, presenting data from Earth's deep space archives. Our scientists found records of these beings in old ruins. The ancient races called them the Devourers. They nearly wiped out all life in the galaxy once before. If they're so dangerous, why didn't the ancient races destroy them? Asked Goldeye, his scales shimmering with agitation. They tried, Tom explained. But you can't kill something that feeds on energy by shooting energy weapons at it. The ancients could only force them into dormancy by using specialized containment fields. The meeting erupted into arguments. The warrior races wanted to attack immediately with their most powerful weapons. The trading species suggested trying to negotiate. Others simply refused to believe there was any real threat. Meanwhile, Tom noticed more human ships quietly arriving at the station. They were following long-established emergency protocols, preparing for the worst while others argued about whether there was even a problem. Later that day, Tom stood in his office with Officer Jones and Captain Park, reviewing the latest data. The approaching Devourers were closer now, their massive forms distorting space itself. Earth has activated the Genesis Protocol, Park announced grimly. All human colonies are beginning emergency evacuations of threatened systems. Genesis Protocol, Jones asked. A backup plan we hoped we'd never need, Tom explained. Every human settlement has underground bunkers, supply caches, and escape ships ready. We've been preparing for something like this since we first reached the stars. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the station. The main screen showed a distant star violently flaring before dimming to almost nothing. The Devourers had claimed another victim. They're picking up speed, Tom noted, checking his suit's readings. As they feed, they get faster. At this rate, they'll reach the core systems in days, not weeks. The station shook as dozens of warships jumped into nearby space. The warrior races had decided to attack, ignoring all warnings about the futility of energy weapons. They're going to make things worse, Jones said, watching the warships charge their weapons. All that energy will just make the Devourers stronger. Tom rushed to the communication center, trying to warn the attack fleet. But the warrior races had already made up their minds. They called him a coward, saying humans had no understanding of true combat. The battle was brief and devastating. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes passed harmlessly through the Devourers. Worse, the creatures seemed to absorb the attacks, growing larger and more visible with each blast. Several warships vanished instantly, their energy stripped away along with their crews. The remaining ships retreated in panic, some crashing into each other in their haste to escape. The station's corridors filled with frightened aliens demanding immediate evacuation. It's time, Captain Park said, activating his emergency beacon. Implement the human protocols. All of them. Tom nodded, entering commands into his suit's computer. Throughout the station, hidden systems began powering up. Humans had installed backup generators, shield emitters, and evacuation systems on every station they helped build. Other species had mocked these unnecessary precautions, but now they would serve everyone. Send the alert to all human ships in range, Tom ordered. Tell them to begin loading evacuees immediately, priority to civilians and children. As chaos erupted around them, the humans remained calm, following procedures they had practiced countless times. Their cowardly preparation was about to save countless lives. In the distance, another star flickered and died. The Devourers were coming, and only humanity's excessive caution stood between them and the extinction of all life in the galaxy. The station shook violently as another wave of refugees arrived. 3 days had passed since the failed attack on the Devourers, and the situation had grown desperate. The beings had consumed 12 more stars, leaving dead systems and frozen planets in their wake. Tom worked tirelessly at his control station, directing evacuation efforts while monitoring the approaching threat. His environmental suit's power was low, but he dared not remove it. The station's main systems were becoming unreliable as more and more power was diverted to handle a flood of incoming ships. The mighty Rock Plains fleet is retreating, Officer Jones reported, her voice tight with tension. They lost another 30 ships trying to stop the Devourers. Through the observation window, Tom watched the once proud warrior race's ships flee in disorder. Commander Blake stood nearby, his blue skin pale with shock as he watched his people abandon their territory. How? Blake whispered. How did this happen? We are the strongest military force in the sector. Strength isn't always about weapons, Tom replied, checking his displays. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back and think. The station's lights flickered ominously. More refugee ships were approaching, many damaged from their desperate escape attempts. The Devourers had changed their pattern, becoming more aggressive as they grew stronger. Transfer all incoming ships to docking bays 3 through 7, Tom ordered. Those are the only ones with our backup power systems still functioning. Goldeye slithered into the control room, his usual arrogance replaced by fear. The Trading Alliance is pulling out of the sector. They say it's not profitable to maintain operations here anymore. Not profitable, Jones said in disbelief. We're talking about the survival of entire species. Tom understood their fear, but there was no time for anger. He pulled up the evacuation protocols on his suit's display. Captain Park, we need to implement Phase 2. Park nodded grimly. All around the station, hidden panels began opening, revealing emergency equipment that humans had quietly installed over the years. Backup life support systems, emergency power generators, and temporal stasis fields, all the unnecessary safety measures that other species had mocked. All these systems, Blake said, watching in amazement. You had these ready the whole time. Humans always prepare for the worst, Tom explained, activating another set of emergency protocols. We learned that lesson the hard way back on Earth. A massive explosion lit up space nearby as another star went dark. The Devourers were getting closer. Through the window, Tom could see their massive forms more clearly now, like living tears in the fabric of space, consuming everything in their path. The station's main power failed, plunging everything into darkness for a few seconds before human backup systems kicked in. Panic erupted in the corridors as thousands of refugees realized how close the danger was. We can't hold them all, Jones said, looking at the crowd of frightened aliens. There are too many. We hold everyone we can, Tom replied firmly. That's what humans do. We don't leave people behind. He brought up a new set of coordinates on his display. Captain, it's time to reveal our last backup plan. Send the signal to activate the emergency waypoints. Throughout the sector, hidden human installations began powering up. For decades, humans had been building secret emergency shelters, supply depots, and escape routes, all while being laughed at for their paranoid behavior. "Direct all civilian ships to these coordinates," Tom ordered, sending the data to the remaining fleet commanders. "Each waypoint has enough supplies and life support to sustain thousands of refugees." The warrior races that hadn't fled watched in stunned silence as human ships arrived in perfect formation, implementing evacuation plans that had been refined through countless drills. The trading species that had dismissed human safety protocols now desperately followed their instructions. As another star died in the distance, Tom couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. Humanity's greatest weakness, their constant fear of disaster, had become their greatest strength. While the brave species fled in panic and the practical ones abandoned their people, the cowardly humans stayed, fighting not with weapons, but with preparation, planning, and the determination to save everyone they could. The real test was still to come, but for now, humanity's much-mocked safety protocols were the only thing standing between civilization and extinction. Tom stood in the emergency command center, surrounded by screens showing the massive evacuation effort taking place across the sector. The station's original control room had been abandoned hours ago when the main power finally failed completely. Now, only the human backup systems kept everything running. "Report from Earth Command," Officer Jones announced, her suit's lights casting shadows on the wall. "The Genesis protocol is fully activated. All human colonies are deploying their emergency resources." Through the reinforced windows, Tom watched as another human relief fleet arrived. Their ships were different from the warships of other species: less weaponry, more cargo space, better shields, and multiple backup systems. Ships built not for glory, but for survival. Commander Blake approached Tom, his proud warrior stance now humbled. "I don't understand. How do humans build all this without anyone noticing?" "We did it in plain sight," Tom explained, checking his suit's diagnostics. "Everyone was so busy laughing at our excessive safety measures that they never asked why we needed so many backup systems, so many emergency supplies." The station shook as the devourers consumed another nearby star. But this time, something was different. The emergency lights didn't even flicker. "Quantum battery systems engaged," Captain Park reported. "Another useless human precaution. We've been installing them throughout the sector for decades, hiding them inside regular maintenance projects." Goldeye, who had chosen to stay and help, watched in amazement as more human ships arrived, each following precise emergency protocols. "Your people planned for everything." "Not everything," Tom said, pulling up more data on his display. "But we planned for anything we could imagine, and we imagined a lot of disasters." The screen showed human colonies transforming across the sector. Hidden bunkers opened, revealing vast underground cities. Orbital platforms shifted, revealing stockpiles of supplies. Emergency fleets emerged from camouflaged docking bays. "On Earth," Tom continued, "we nearly destroyed ourselves many times. Nuclear wars, climate disasters, pandemics. Each time, we survived by learning to prepare, by being cowardly enough to admit that terrible things could happen." A message flashed across Tom's display. He allowed himself a small smile. "The first wave of evacuees has reached the emergency waypoints. The stasis systems are working perfectly." Jones looked up from her station. "The devourers are changing course. They're heading for the largest population centers." "Just as we predicted," Tom said, activating another set of commands. "Captain, initiate Operation Darkstar." Throughout the sector, human ships began implementing a plan decades in the making. They weren't trying to fight the devourers. They were working to save everyone else from their own reckless bravery. "Attention all remaining ships," Tom broadcast across all channels. "Follow the human vessels to these coordinates. This is not a request. Your weapons cannot hurt the devourers, but they can hurt you." To everyone's surprise, the surviving warrior races obeyed. They had seen enough of their mighty fleets destroyed to finally listen to the cowardly humans. As the evacuation continued, Tom received a private message from Earth Command. He read it twice, then turned to Captain Park. "Sir, they're activating the Omega contingency." Park's face grew serious behind his visor. "Already? That was supposed to be our last resort." "Look at the data," Tom replied, sending the readings to Park's suit display. "The Devourers are evolving faster than we predicted. We need to implement the contingency now, while we still can." The captain studied the numbers, then nodded slowly. "Do it. Alert all human ships to begin final preparations." Tom sent out the coded signal. Across the sector, human vessels began moving into new positions. All those years of drills, all those unnecessary practice runs, were about to pay off. "What are you planning?" Blake asked, watching the human ships move with perfect coordination. "Something desperate," Tom answered honestly. "Something that only a species used to planning for the worst could have prepared for." As he worked, Tom thought about how the galaxy had mocked humanity's cautious nature. But now, as civilization itself hung in the balance, that same caution might be the only thing that could save everyone. The real test was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what true courage looked like. The Omega contingency was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. As Tom monitored the operation from the emergency command center, hundreds of human ships moved into precise positions around the sector. Each ship carried special equipment that had been developed, tested, and hidden away over decades. "First containment grid is ready," Officer Jones reported, her voice steady despite the tension. "All human ships report systems at full power." Through the station's windows, Tom could see the Devourers approaching. They were enormous now, their dark forms blotting out the stars. The nearest ones had grown to the size of small moons, gorged on the energy they'd consumed. "They're trying to surround us," Commander Blake observed, watching the tactical display. His warrior training helped him spot the pattern. "But your ships aren't retreating." "No," Tom confirmed, checking his suit's readings. "We're not running. We're containing." He turned to Captain Park. "Sir, requesting permission to activate the dimensional anchors." Park nodded. "Do it. Alert all ships to engage their shield harmonics." At Tom's command, every human vessel activated hidden devices that had been dismissed as unnecessary safety equipment during their construction. Energy fields sprang to life between the ships, forming a massive web around the approaching Devourers. "What is this?" Goldeye asked, his scales rippling with nervous energy. "Something we learned from studying ancient ruins," Tom explained, monitoring the power readings. "The Devourers aren't just eating energy. They're using it to punch holes in space-time. That's how they move so fast between stars. But if we can stabilize space around them." The effect was immediate. The Devourers' movement slowed as the dimensional anchors took effect. Their massive forms became more solid, more visible, as they lost their ability to slip between dimensions. "Secondary containment grid online," Jones announced. "Power levels holding steady." Tom activated the next phase of the protocol. Throughout the sector, hidden platforms emerged from their camouflaged positions. Each one carried what looked like massive mirror arrays. "Energy reflection fields," Tom explained to the amazed aliens watching. "The Devourers feed on direct energy, but reflected energy." He paused as the first arrays powered up. "That gives them indigestion." The mirrors caught the energy being drained from nearby stars and bounced it back at the Devourers. The creatures recoiled, their forms distorting as they tried to process the reflected power. "Third containment grid activated," Jones reported. "The Devourers are being forced into the designated zones." Human ships moved with perfect coordination, herding the massive beings into carefully prepared trap zones. Everything was proceeding according to plans that had been refined through thousands of simulations. "You practiced this," Blake realized, watching the operation unfold. "All those safety drills, all those evacuation exercises. We practiced everything," Tom confirmed, entering more commands. "Because we were afraid. Because we knew that someday something terrible would happen. And we wanted to be ready." The station shuddered as the largest devourer tried to break free of the containment grid. But the human ships held their positions, their multiple backup systems ensuring nothing could fail at the critical moment. Final phase beginning, Captain Park announced. All ships prepare to activate stasis generators. This was the riskiest part of the plan. The stasis technology was experimental, developed in secret by human scientists who were always preparing for the worst. It had never been tested on anything as large as the Devourers. Stasis fields charging, Tom reported, watching the power levels climb. We'll only get one shot at this. Around them, the other species watched in stunned silence as humanity's excessive preparation came together in a massive coordinated operation. The warrior races saw their concept of bravery challenged by humans who had spent decades preparing for this moment. The trading species recognized that all their profit meant nothing compared to humanity's investment in survival. Stasis fields at maximum charge, Jones called out. Ready on your command. Tom looked at Captain Park, who gave a firm nod. This was the moment that would prove whether humanity's cautious nature had truly saved the galaxy. All ships, Tom broadcast, his finger hovering over the final command. Execute Omega Protocol. Now, the moment Tom activated the Omega Protocol, thousands of stasis fields erupted from the human ships. The energy appeared as sheets of crystalline light, enveloping the trapped Devourers in a web of temporal stasis. For a breathless moment, everyone watched as the massive beings struggled against their containment. Stasis field stability at 90%. Officer Jones reported, her voice tense. 85%. Holding steady. The Devourers' movements slowed, their enormous forms gradually freezing in place. The stasis effect spread through their bodies, forcing them into a state of suspended animation. Around the station, everyone watched in amazement as the threat that had terrified the galaxy was slowly contained by human technology. How long will it hold them? Commander Blake asked, his warrior's pride replaced by genuine respect. The stasis fields are self-sustaining, Tom explained, checking his suit's readings. They'll last for millions of years, just like the ones the ancients used. But this time, we've added a few extra safety features. Captain Park smiled behind his visor. Backup generators, redundant containment systems, emergency protocols. And of course, multiple layers of monitoring equipment, Tom added. Because we're paranoid like that. Goldeye slithered closer to the display screens, his scales reflecting the light of the stasis fields. All this time, we thought humans were cowards for always preparing for disasters. We never understood. That true courage isn't about not being afraid, Tom finished. It's about acknowledging the fear and preparing to face it anyway. The emergency command center burst into activity as reports flooded in from across the sector. The stasis fields were holding at every containment point. The Devourers, these ancient threats that had consumed entire star systems, were now trapped by the very species the galaxy had mocked for being too cautious. Message from Earth Command, Jones announced. They're beginning Phase 1 of the recovery operation. All emergency shelters are reporting successful protection of evacuees. Tom watched as human ships began escorting refugee vessels back to their home systems. The humans had not only stopped the threat, but had managed to save millions of lives in the process. Their excessive preparation had paid off in ways no one could have predicted. Commander Blake approached Tom, standing straighter than before. The warrior races owe humanity an apology. We mistook your caution for cowardice, your preparation for paranoia. We were wrong. Very wrong, Goldeye added. The trading species also misjudged you. We saw your safety measures as wasteful expenses, not as the investments in survival they truly were. Tom shook his head. We didn't do it for recognition. We did it because we had to. Because humanity learned long ago that the universe is full of dangers, and the only way to survive is to be ready for anything. Over the next few days, the true scope of human preparation became clear. Not only had they saved countless lives, but they had emergency plans ready to help rebuild the damaged systems. Hidden supply caches provided resources for reconstruction. Backup colonies were ready to house displaced populations. "The Galactic Council is calling for a special session," Captain Park announced one evening. "They want to make humanity the head of a new emergency preparedness committee." Tom smiled as he finally removed his environmental suit. The immediate danger passed. "They laughed at us for always wearing these suits. Now every species is asking for our safety protocols." "It's strange," Jones said, looking out at the now quiet stars. "We spent so long being mocked for our cautious nature, but it turned out to be our greatest strength." "Because we remembered something the other species had forgotten," Tom replied. "That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you're afraid, and then do everything you can to face that fear." As he watched the rescue and recovery operations continue, Tom thought about how humanity's reputation had changed. They were no longer seen as the cowards of the galaxy, but as the wise guardians who had saved civilization itself. The other species had learned a valuable lesson. True courage wasn't about fearlessly rushing into danger. Sometimes it was about being careful enough, cautious enough, and yes, afraid enough to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. In the end, it wasn't warriors' courage or traders' wealth that had saved the galaxy. It was human preparation, human caution, and most importantly, human wisdom that had made the difference. The cowardly humans had stepped up when no one else could, and in doing so, they had redefined what it meant to be brave.